let's talk about what's at stake for Brock Purdy. I received a DM. I'm not the most plugged in guy. I'm not trying to be that guy. I just want to pontificate. It's easier. Sometimes, though, people give me information and I feel like a responsibility to share it because I don't want to sit on it. I want people to know what I know. So what I heard is that there's a lot at stake for Kyle and John this year. Don't know what exactly is at stake, but it's year 8. The team's expensive. They kind of it's Super Bowl or bust is what I heard. Heads will roll, yada 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 yada. Sure. Kyle's really smart though, and when he's on the chopping block, when he's in the crosshairs, he has a good way of putting someone else in a spot, and it's usually the quarterback. So what I want to ask you, Brock Purdy, year 3, year 2.5, 1 year away from becoming one of the highest paid players in the league. Threw a bunch of picks in training camp, wasn't great in preseason. Pass protection isn't a priority here. If this team doesn't do great, if this team takes a step back, last year we talked about before the season, if this team doesn't make it all the way, who's going to be the scapegoat? We all figured out it's definitely Steve Wilkes. We can see that shit coming from a mile away. Pardon my French. If this team doesn't reach expectations, and the expectations are a Super Bowl victory, is Brock going to be the one who gets scapegoated?
I sure hope not, man. I sure hope not. Listen, I've got my opinions about quarterbacks that I think aren't elite in this league, and I certainly don't think Brock is that yet. And I struggle to want my franchise to overpay for a non-elite quarterback. But that being said, dude, how can you not root for Brock Purdy? I mean, it's the most amazing story ever. And he has played really well. It's a crime almost how much he's getting paid at this point. So if something were to happen, whether he gets injured, whether he's scapegoated, whether he doesn't play well at all, he just regresses and this team doesn't do well, that would be a shame because there's a lot of money, life-changing money for a good young man on the table here. And I hope he gets it, whether it's here or elsewhere. It'll be here, assuming he plays well. And I think as long as he's healthy, he will play well. But you're right, man. I think Kyle, we've seen this. This league is not what people think it is under the surface. How many times behind the scenes coaches throw other coaches under the table to not get fired, or throw their GM under the table, or vice versa, throw players under the table? I mean, you just had something come out from the Washington Commanders where like the VP of player operations is saying some nasty things. This is not out of the ordinary. All right. These are things that happen behind closed doors, whether you're comfortable with it or not. So yes, if Kyle Shanahan feels like his back's against the wall, he will grasp at something because he's trying to save his job. Remember, one of the interviews he talked about that he learned from his dad, the one thing he learned from his dad wasn't how to win, wasn't how to get a quarterback. It was how to keep your job. That's what he learned from his dad. So if you think, and I'm not saying Brock Purdy necessarily, because I think Brock Purdy's probably going to play too good for him to be any sort of scapegoat, but he will find something. He will grasp onto something if it doesn't go as planned. Absolutely. Could that be Brock Purdy? Certainly. I don't think it will be. And hopefully the 49ers just have a really good season. But if they don't, he'll grasp onto something. He will.
And like when we say he'll grasp onto something, it's not like he's going to come out after a game at the post-game press conference, some bitter defeat, and say this was Brock's fault. Like it's not how it's going to go. No. It's going to be people in the media who were close to Kyle, like Chris Sims. You know, like when they lost the Super Bowl 4 years ago, everyone agreed it was Jimmy's fault. There was the missed throw to Emmanuel Sanders, the deep throw. Like he was schemed open. It was there. Jimmy missed it. Kyle avoided flag, even though you were up 10 points in the fourth quarter. You gave it up, put it all on Jimmy. And that was easy. And he ended up being the scapegoat. Then last year they lose the Super Bowl and very few people would scapegoat Brock Purdy for that loss. But no. Chris Sims, a couple of months ago, as he ranked Brock Purdy, 16th or 17th amongst quarterbacks in the NFL, said, look, if he was really a top 10 quarterback, they would have won the Super Bowl. And if Jordan Love was their quarterback, they would have won the Super Bowl. And it's interesting to hear someone that close who literally has Kyle Shanahan's initials tattooed on his ankle say something like that. Because that to me is Kyle's stance that, he's propping these guys up. And yeah, Brock's better than Jimmy, but he's still propped up by Kyle.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I bet you if Kyle was doing a top, 20 quarterback ranking, Brock Purdy would probably rank lower than people expect. Probably lower than most of you in the chat would rank him if I'm being real. And I think that would shock a lot of people, but I think that's the reality. That being said, there's two problems for Kyle Shanahan. One is Brock Purdy has proven that when it comes playoff time, even if he doesn't play great every game, he plays well enough for him not to be the reason that they lose. He wasn't the reason they lost in the Super Bowl. He wasn't the reason, obviously the Eagles game, he got hurt. That's not his fault. But if they had lost to the Lions, he wasn't the reason there either. So he plays well enough in the playoffs. And the other problem he has using Purdy as a scapegoat is this fan base prefers Purdy over Kyle Shanahan. I would guarantee it. If it comes down to one or the other, I think this fan base would vote for Brock Purdy to stay on the island over Kyle Shanahan. So I've always said the moment that Kyle Shanahan starts throwing Brock Purdy under the bus is the moment that this fan base runs thin with patience in Kyle Shanahan. As long as he doesn't do that, I think he can be here as long as he wants. But if he were to do that, I think this fan base would ride tough for Brock Purdy over him.
Unless he loses to the Jets week 1. A lot at stake. A lot at stake for Brock Purdy. We'll see what he does.